Prita, shall I ask sir to join?
Yes, ma'am, I'm ready. I hope sir is already in.
Just check.
Yes, ma'am, sure. Yes, ma'am, sir is already in.
Good afternoon, madam.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, madam.
Prita, how
Ma'am,
many more to join?
they're above 25, ma'am.
So still 25 yet to join.
Yes, ma'am.
Just put some more reminders, dear.
Yes, ma'am, sure, I'll do that.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Prita, I think sir should start now. It's already 3:40.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. Can I start my part, ma'am?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence. Good afternoon to one and all present here. I'm Preeta G, passing my final year MCom at St. Teresa's Degree College for Women. I would like to stretch a warm welcome to PG Coordinator, to PG Department of Commerce in association with IQAC organize 2 days national level online student development program on postgraduate project dissertation day 2 2021. Sunshine is a welcome thing. It brings a lot of brightness to us. With this quotes, I request Monica Williams of final year MCom to welcome the gathering. Over to you, Monica.
Thank you, Preeta. Success is a progressive realization of predetermined, worthwhile personal goals. Paul J. Mayer. Good afternoon to one and all. Thank you all for finding time and visiting today's national level program for Student Development Day 2. A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. John C. Maxwell. With no much impediment, I would like to invite one such leader, our respected principal, Dr. Sister Prema, in her absence. Our principal is an eminent and a versatile person filled with enthusiasm. And with great pleasure and honor, I would like to invite our principal to this session. We welcome you, sister. A role of the assistant principal is a great deal more complex than most can conceive at first glance. Cheryl Wilson. I would now like to bid greeting to the most splendid person who is none other than our assistant principal, Mrs. Malika Ma'am, IQAC director, in their absence. Our vice principal is a vibrant person who never fails to inspire us at all times. We welcome you, ma'am. Now, without further delay, we will turn the time over to our speaker. Our presenter today is Dr. D. Kumaresan, sir. Sir is a dynamic mentor who is here to enlighten us with his knowledge. I take immense pleasure to invite our distinguished guest to the session. We welcome you, sir. I also extend a warm welcome to our faculties and student coordinators of St. Teresa's Degree College for Women, who has dealt in tireless efforts to make this workshop a success. I cordially welcome you all. Eventually, I would like to welcome all our participants who are overwhelmed and enthusiastic to widen their knowledge through this session. A warm welcome to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica, for your pleasant welcome. Excellence is not being the best, it is doing your best. With this quotes, I request our speaker, Dr. D. Kumaresan, sir, to take over the session. Here we go, sir.
Thank you, Preeta and Monica. Good afternoon to one and all. It is a great privilege for me to conduct the day 2 session of the 2-day National Online Student Development Program on postgraduate project dissertation. In yesterday's session, we have discussed about the synopsis writing, then introduction to research, problem definition, objectives, hypothesis, methodology, data collection, and sampling techniques. In today's session, we are going to discuss about the drafting of questionnaire, percentage analysis and interpretation, findings, suggestions or recommendations, and conclusion. So these are the contents of today's session. The first one is designing of questionnaire. In every research, questionnaire or interview schedule plays a vital role. You know pretty well, in all the researches, whether it is a postgraduate degree project research or MPhil research or PhD research or postdoctoral degree research, the research is based on the data analysis. So how to collect the data? We have discussed yesterday. There are two major sources, primary data and the secondary data. As far as the secondary data is concerned, it is already collected by some other scholars, whether it is published or unpublished. It may be from the extracted from the annual reports or government reports or personal records and so on. So that is called secondary data. But as far as the primary data is concerned, the researcher himself or herself collects the data as a first-hand information from the sample respondents selected for the study. So primary data is the major source of data for analysis and interpretation in every research. Secondary data is a ready-made one. It is already available. But primary data is a tailor-made. So, if the data is tailor-made, we can assure that it will be suitable to fulfill the objectives of the study. So there needs no changes or modifications to be made, but not manipulation. Grouping and regrouping is not necessary in the case of primary data. Whereas in the case of secondary data, it may not be suitable as it is. So in the case of primary data, we are discussing about the preparation of questionnaire. Two major tools are used for collection of primary data. One is questionnaire and the other is interview schedule. In the case of questionnaire, we prepare a structured questionnaire and it is administered or distributed either in person or through mail or nowadays through online mode, electronic mode. The questionnaire is sent to the respondents. After having given a specific time, the filled-in questionnaire is collected back from the respondents. But as far as the interview schedule is concerned, the researcher or his enumerator conducts face-to-face interaction with the respondent. In the case of questionnaire, the respondent himself or herself fills up the questionnaire, states the responses in the questionnaire by himself. In the case of interview, the researcher asks questions to the respondent, and the responses told orally by the respondents have been recorded or entered by the researcher only. That is the basic difference between questionnaire and interview schedule. So in the case of interview, if the researcher meets the respondent in person and asks the question, if the respondent is suppose unable to understand any question, there is an opportunity for him to ask or to clarify his doubt so that the correct data will be furnished by the respondent. In the case of questionnaire, as I told you, it is distributed first. So a time is allowed or given to the respondent. During the particular time, there may not be any contact between the researcher and the respondent. After a specified time, the respondents are supposed to return the filled-in questionnaire, or the researcher goes to the respondents and collect them. So in this case, if there is any clarification, or if the respondent is unable to understand any question, there may be two adverse possibilities. One is submitting incomplete questionnaire. So the data expected or required data may not be available if the respondent is unable to understand the questions asked in the questionnaire. One thing. And number two, if the question is not understandable, then the respondent may state incorrect data. So there could be two possibilities. One is incomplete data or incorrect data. In order to avoid both of these adverse effects of the questionnaire, it is always recommended that we have to take utmost care while preparing the structured questionnaire. What is a structured questionnaire? It is a set of questions asked to the respondents. All the questions are one and same for each and every respondent. Number one. Number two, all the questions are asked in the same order to every respondent. So it is called structure. So here, how to structure the questionnaire, how to design the questionnaire, what are to be included, what are to be excluded, how the language is to be used, whether it is English or a regional language, how should we use the language in the questionnaire? Are we expected to prove our proficiency in the language, or whether it should be easy for the respondents to understand the question? Yes, there is no need for the researcher to prove his proficiency in the language, whether it is in English or in regional language. The respondents should be able to understand thoroughly, clearly, and without any need for clarification about any question. That is what expected, and we call that type of question as the quality questionnaire. So for the quality of the questionnaire, we need the questionnaire to be free from any ambiguity, any blur, any lack of clarification. So here it should be free from doubt. It should be free from ambiguity. So we call it as unambiguous questionnaire. Each and every questionnaire should be unambiguous. And what are all the data expected to fulfill the objectives of the study? We have already defined the problem and framed the objectives. While framing the objectives itself, simultaneously, we have formulated the hypothesis. Then we have selected the appropriate statistical tools. All these things should be synchronized. Definition of problem, framing of objectives, formulation of hypothesis, selection of tools, and the questionnaire. All these things are to be done simultaneously. There must be a sync between all these activities. Then only your research may be conducted smoothly. So, we have already decided what are the objectives. Based on the objectives, or in order to fulfill the objectives, we have formulated a certain hypothesis. At that time, we have decided what are all the variables, what are the independent variables, and what are the dependent variables we have already selected. We have formulated the hypothesis too, and we have selected the appropriate tools also for analysis. And we should know, please go back, previous one itself. Go back. Yes, please stay back here. So, while selecting the tools, we should understand how the data should be for applying a particular tool. For example, if we want to apply a t-test, then how should be the data? If we want to apply ANOVA, when can we apply ANOVA? One-way ANOVA or two-way ANOVA or MANOVA, ANACOVA or MANACOVA. In the case of t-test, one sample t-test, independent sample t-test or paired sample t-test. For the paired sample t-test, what type of data is required? So that is called expected data. And required data. What type of analysis we are going to make? What are the expected results? For this kind of results, what kind of analysis is to be made? If this kind of analysis is to be made, what kind of data is required? So, unambiguousness, expected data, required data, and data type should be decided. Then only we can design the question. While designing the questionnaire, we should understand it should not be lengthy. It should be concise. And moreover, the questionnaire should be divided into different parts or different sections. Like we are collecting the personal data or demographic profile or socioeconomic profile of the respondents. In that case, that may be divided as a separate part. So first section contains the questions relating to the demographic profile. Okay. Second section, depending upon the objectives, we have to divide the sections of the question. Then order of questions. Which question should come first? Which question should come next? That order is called order of question. Then type of questions. Pretty well different types of questions are there. We are going to discuss about the order, type, and choices in the coming slides. Please go on to the next slide. Yes. Sections. I told you, no? The entire questionnaire should be divided into different sections according to the objectives. The first section obviously is provided for demographic profile. In the demographic profile, we know name, gender, age, marital status, educational level, occupational status, monthly income, nature of family, area of residence, number of dependent members in the family, number of earning members in the family. Like that, we can include certain demographic variables. It is called demographic profile, and that comes the first, that gets the first place or first section of the question. Then second one, third one, fourth one, depending upon the objectives. Yesterday we discussed about the brand loyalty, and the objectives were assessing the awareness, examining the perception, investigating the factors influencing brand preference, assessing the satisfaction, like that. So here, the data related to the first objective. What is the first objective? Assessing the level of awareness. So the questions relating to awareness should be separated in a section. Similarly, perception related questions are provided in a separate section. Then factors influencing brand preference, another section, and so on. Questions relating to satisfaction or questions relating to problems faced, like that. The entire questionnaire is now divided into different sections according to the objectives. Next. Yes. Order of questions. Order of questions is also called a sequence of questions. There must be a coherence between questions. What is the first question? What is the next question? Then another one. In between different sections also, there must be coherence. Order must be there. Sequence must be there. See, for example, there are three questions I have given to you. How long are you using? Are you using? Why are you using? How long are you using? Are you using? Why are you using? These three questions are included in your question. Okay. Suppose if the first question is, how long are you using? It implies that the respondent has been using the product. Isn't it? How long are you using means we expect that the respondent is using or has been using the product. In that case, if the next question is, are you using? Understand the coherence. Is it correct? If the first question is, how long are you using? And the second question is, are you using? Whether the order of the question is correct? No, because if you have asked, how long are you using? It implies that he is using. Then what is the need for the second one? Are you using? No need. So if you want to include, are you using? Then you can place it in the first position and The first question may be, are you using? Yes or not? If yes, how long are you using? So that should be the second question. Then, if you want to understand the reason for which he is using, then you can place that question in the third position. Then you can ask, why are you using? Now you can, I hope you have understood what is the order of question. So while framing the question or deciding the question, we have to understand what are the questions to be asked. You just write what are the questions to be asked. What are the questions you have in your mind about the objectives of the study. So based on that, you have to write. You have to list out all the questions. Then read it one by one. You just check whether there is any sequence in between two questions or not, whether there is any coherence in between the questions. Like that you have to check. After that, you can decide the order of questions. This should be first, this should be next, this should be third, this should be fourth. Like that, you decide the order of question and you can include in your questionnaire finally. Then, next slide. Yes, type of questions. There are different types of questions. One is, common classification of questions is open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. Let us discuss what is open-ended and what is closed. Then we can have single response questions and multiple response questions. What do you mean by single response question? There may be several choices, that is different. But in the case of single response question, the respondent is expected to select any one of the choices given to him. That is called single response question. For example, gender is one of the questions. We are given two choices, male and female. Can the respondent select both the choices? No. Only one choice can be selected. Either he may select the male or he may select female. So only one response shall be provided, shall be given to any particular question means that is called single response question. And most of the questions we are including in the questionnaire are single response questions only. What about multiple response questions? Suppose we are asking the brands aware. What are the brands known to the respondents? See, some FMCG products are there, or some other cosmetics are there. We want to know the brands, even for two-wheelers. We want to test or examine what are the brands known to the respondent. So we are asking, what are the brands you know? We given certain brands, for example, Suzuki, Honda, TVS, Hero, Mahindra, Bajaj. Like that, we have given choices. Now the question is, what are the brands? See, the question itself is in a plural form. What are the brands known to you? In that case, if I know about Suzuki, I will tick Suzuki. If I know about Honda, I will tick Honda. Both I can select. But in the case of single response question, I can select only one choice. One of the multiple choices given to me, I can select means that is called a single response question. But here, in the case of multiple responses, I can select any number of choices given. Even all the choices I can select. That is called multiple responses questions. Then ranking questions. Suppose you want to rank the features of a particular product or rank the problems faced by the consumers. In that case, you have to ask the ranking questions. So number of choices, number of problems or number of features are given. The respondents are expected to order or to rank the choices, rank the features according to their order of preference. So for example, features of a product, quality, quantity, price, durability, availability, like that. So 5 features we have given. First rank, second rank, third rank, fourth rank, fifth rank, like that they have to give the rank to each and every feature. That is called ranking questions. So these are the several types of questions. Let us see one by one. Go to next slide. Open-ended questions. Yeah. Here, open. The doors are opened. The gate is opened to the respondent to give any answer. So there is no restriction for any respondent. There is no limitation for the respondent to give any answer in his own opinion or in his own words. Anything he feels, anything he wants to say, that can be given. It is called open-ended question. See, for example, here we are using 3 types of question words. How, why, what. In the previous one, I told you, why are you using? Why are you using? If the question is left as it is, why are you using blank? A blank line is given and the respondent is expected to fill the blank or complete the sentence. Why are you using? It is said to be open-ended question. How do you feel about this SDP conducted by St. Teresa's College? Or how do you feel about the content delivery of the resource person? Yeah, blank space is given. It is also said to be open-ended question. What do you understand? Yeah, blank line is given. It is also open-ended question. So in the case of open-ended questions, respondents feel comfortable because they are allowed to state any answer, what they feel, what they understand, what they perceive, and what is their point of view, what is their actual feeling, that is recorded. So we call it as open-ended question. And of course here the answers are not limited within 1 or 2 words. Anything he can write. That's why we have given a blank line. So a full line is given. Whatever is felt, whatever he wants to say, the respondents are allowed to say completely. That is called open-ended question. Then what is close-ended question? Next slide. Yes. It is contrast with the open-ended question. It is just opposite. What was the nature of open-ended question? The respondents are allowed. The gates are opened. The doors are opened to the respondents to state anything they feel. They are allowed to state anything they want to say. Was open-ended question. But in the case of closed-ended question, it is just a contrast to the open-ended. So here the gates are closed. The choices are limited. The respondents are expected to select only from the choices given to him. Nothing more than the choices given or options given. So options are already given. Choices are already given. The respondents are expected to select any of the choices given to them only. So they have to choose necessarily any of the choices given to them. So here, the insights are limited. The respondents cannot express their feelings, cannot state what they felt. So there is a closed gate for the respondents to express their feelings. Here answers are limited within 1 or 2 words, that is given as choices. According to the choices only they can give. See, for example, we are collecting the age of the respondents. How old are you? That's all. The question is, how old are you? They are filling their original age. 43, 52, 29, 14, 16, 17, 72, like that. That is called open-ended. How old are you? We are giving certain age groups up to 20 years, 20 to 40 years, 40 to 60 years, above 60 years. So now there are limited choices. The respondents are not given or not allowed to express their feelings. Their actual age is not furnished here. The respondents are expected to state the age group to which he belongs. That's all. So up to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60 and above 60. That's all. There are only 4 choices. Even if his age is 18, he cannot state the age as 18. That is what called close-ended. See the difference between open-ended question and close-ended question. Now it is a question to you. Sir, what question I can include? Whether close-ended question or open-ended question, which is to be included? It is left to you. It is according to your discretion. You can go through the literature. You can go through the previous studies. According to your objectives, according to your variables, according to your hypothesis, according to your tools, you can decide whether the open-ended questions are to be included and or close-ended questions are to be included. It is left to you. There is no specific criteria. And some students may ask, sir, can I use both open-ended question and close-ended questions in the single questionnaire? Yes, of course. Why not? There is a myth and misconception among some of the students that both are not to be included in the same questionnaire. It is not at all correct, mind you, my dear young students. Both the types of questions can be included in a single questionnaire. For some of the questions, you can provide open-ended questions. For some other questions, you can give close-ended choices. There is no doubt at all. And some doubts may arise for some of the students. Sir, if choices are given, whether it must necessarily be called as close-ended question. Of course, it is correct, but subject to certain exceptions. What are the exceptions? As I told you, gender, we are providing two choices, male and female. For age, we have given certain age groups, less than 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60 and above 60. Here also choices are restricted. Suppose in the case of occupational status, we are giving certain choices. That is, businessman, professional, farmer, housewife, employee, student. Are these the only occupations available? No. There may be some other occupations also. In that case, we cannot find out all the occupations and we cannot include all the occupations in our questionnaire. Rather, we can limit it. In that case, if any of the respondent is belonging to any other particular occupational status, what choice they can choose? For that only, we are providing one more option called others. So those who do not belong to any of the specific classes or categories, they can select the last one, that is others. In that case, please understand, within bracket, you have to give specify. So they have to specify which other occupational status is given by them. So that is to be included. In that case, we can call it as an open-ended question because we have included one of the choices as others. In that case, there is an opportunity for the respondent to state anything he feels. So we can call that type of question as open-ended question. So that is the difference between open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. Next. Yeah. Choices. What are the choices given to any particular question? How many choices are to be given? Is there any minimum limit or maximum limit? Is it a condition or is it a criteria? The number of choices. Say for example, some 3 choices, 4 choices, 5 choices and 6 choices are given. So how many choices are to be given for any particular question? It depends upon the nature of your problem, nature of your variable, nature of your study. You can extend the number of choices. Minimum number of choices will be 2. Because if no choices are given, it is open-ended question. In the case of closed-ended question, we are giving choices. So minimum 2 choices. Maximum n number of choices. Any number of choices we can give. But it is not advisable. So what is advisable, sir? It is advisable to limit the number of choices to a maximum of 5 or 6. Why? Why it is to be limited to 5? Or why it is to be limited to 6? Is there any necessity? Yes. What are the reasons for limiting the choices? Number one, if more choices are given, the respondents will be confused. Which one is appropriate? Whether they have to select this one or that one. For example, as in the case of occupational status, my primary occupation is a teacher. I may be involved in agriculture also. So what choice I have to select? Whether employed or the farmer. Which one I have to select? Like that, if more choices are given, the respondents may be confused to select which one as the appropriate choice. And the second one is the more important one. If you are giving more choices and the sample size is less, for example, you have selected 100 respondents only and you have given some 10 choices or 8 choices, you know what will happen? In one of the choices, the number of respondents will be 25, 46, 53, like that. In some of the choices, the number of respondents will be 3, 4, or any single digit like that. That's the problem. So in one of the choices, number of respondents is high. In another one, it is very less. See, 72 and 2. Just to compare the number of respondents or frequency in each of the choices. So that will happen. In that case, the analysis may also not be good. Interpretation also will be difficult for you. The graph will also not show. Suppose if you are drawing a bar diagram for 72, this much height of bar is drawn. For 2, it will be like this only. See the difference between the heights of the two bars. Sometimes it may not be seen if 2 is there. Suppose if 122 is there and 2 is there in another choice, certainly 2 will not appear. So for that purpose also, we are restricting the number of choices. And moreover, the normal distribution. The data should be normally distributed. Then only we can apply parametric tests for analysis. So normal distribution means, like yesterday some student asked, skewed. Skewed means the curve. We are checking the curve. If the curve is normally distributed, it will be in a symmetric shape or bell shape. Otherwise, what will happen? It will be biased one. In one of the choices, it is skewed. In another choice, it is not shown or it is very limited. So to avoid that, we have to limit the choices. And the selection of choice. Selection of choice means the order of choice. Which choice is to be given first? Which choice is to be given next? And what are the choices relevant to the question? For example, in the case of gender, the common choices given to the respondents we know pretty well, male and female. Sometimes we are including the third gender also. We include transgender. Okay. In the case of marital status, we are giving single and married. That's all. Sometimes more choices may be given, like divorced, widow or widower, newly married with no children, married with one child, married with two children. Like that, the marital status may be given more and more choices. But the thing is, we have to understand whether these choices are relevant for the nature of your problem or the nature of your study. Suppose you are taking up a study relating to the family issues. In that case, as I told you, number of children, married with one child, married with two children, married with more children, married with no children, right? Or divorced, widow, like that we can give. But in most of the cases, we are giving single and married. So based on the nature of study, you can increase the number of choices. So selection of choices must be given much importance. Next, data types. Yes, of course, we should have a clear insight or clear understanding about the data types. Basically, they are classified into three: nominal, ordinal, and scale. However, the scale data is again divided into interval and ratio. So what is nominal data? What is ordinal data? What is interval data? And what is ratio data? Why they are classified? Is there any significance for classification of data into these types? Yes. Let us see one by one. Next. Nominal data. It is qualitative in nature. Even though we assign certain numbers, it is a qualitative data. It is given just as a name to identify that this particular respondent belongs to this particular character, this particular category, this particular group. So here, no quantitative value is assigned. There is no specific order. So we call it as categorical data. Gender. Gender is a data. Gender is a variable. For this variable, we are collecting data. What are the choices we have given? I told you no. Male and female. Male and female. Male is the answer to the question gender. Male is not quantitative. Male is a qualitative. It is a category or group to which the respondent belongs to. That's all. So it is to identify the group or category to which the respondent belongs. So we call it as categorical data. Similarly, marital status. Here also, married, single. Married or single are qualitative. Married is a quality or a character. Gender, male is a character, female is a character. There is no quantity. It is a quality. And as I told you, no quantitative value and no specific order. For example, Male may be considered as 1. Female may be considered as 2. That means group 1 male, group 2 female, that's all. It is just a number. It is just an identifier. That's all. And if suppose you want to change the numbers assigned to them, 1 for female, 2 for female, nothing is wrong at all. So any number you can change. That is called no specific order. Similarly, in the case of marital status, 1 for single, 2 for married, or 1 for married, 2 for single. Nature of family, 1 for joint family, 2 for nuclear family, or 1 for nuclear family, 2 for joint family. There is no issue. Type of family or nature of family is a quality. So we call it as categorical variable or nominal data. Then what is ordinal data? Ordinal data is also qualitative. Next. It is also a qualitative one. But here it is listed in an order. That order may be either ascending or descending. You can place the choices either in ascending order or in descending order, but there must be an order of placing the choices. Unlike in the case of nominal data, it is also qualitative. Ordinal data is also qualitative, but the order is there. See, in the case of gender, 1 for male, 2 for female is okay. 1 for female and 2 for male is also okay. Here, see, in the case of Likert scale, we are giving 5 choices. Strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. We are assigning certain numbers. 5 for strongly agree, 4 for agree, 3 for neutral, 2 for disagree, and 1 for strongly disagree. It is given in descending order. The case of ranking questions, first rank, second rank, third rank, fourth rank, fifth rank, and so on. In that case, order is given in ascending order. So listing the choices either in ascending order or in descending order is okay. See here, you cannot change the order. That is 1 for neutral, 2 for disagree, 3 for agree, 4 for strongly disagree, 5 for agree. Can we list the choices in this order? No. It should either be strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, and strongly disagree. Or otherwise, strongly disagree, agree, neutral, agree, strongly disagree. In this order only, the choices are to be given. So there is a list. The choices are listed in an order. So we call it as ordinal data. So both the nominal data and ordinal data are categorical. Both are qualitative. The difference is, in the case of nominal data, there is no specific order, but in the case of ordinal data, it is listed in a specific order. So both are qualitative, both are quantitative. Both are qualitative as well as categorical. Then what is the next one? Interval data. Next. I told you no, scale data is divided into two: interval data and ratio data. The scale data is a quantitative one. Unlike in the previous two, that is qualitative. In the case of nominal data, there is no order. But in the case of ordinal data, there was an order. Here, interval data is a quantitative data. Here also order is there. Fixed distance between two choices are there. But here, there is no fixed origin. So, the term zero, true zero cannot be taken into account. For example, temperature. What is the temperature? 98 degree, 100 degree, or sometimes 70 degree, 80 degree, like that. So 80 degree, 81 degree, there is a fixed distance. The distance is there, fixed, between 80 and 82, between 80 and 85, between 80 and 90, between 90 and 100. There is some distance. It can be measured. In the case of nominal data or ordinal data, there is no distance between two choices. What is the distance between male and female? Can you say like that? No. But in this case, what is the distance between 80 degree and 85 degree? We can say. So it is a distant one. We call it as interval data. So true zero value is not there. Temperature. We do not know the origin of the temperature. What is the temperature? 80 degree, 90 degree, like that. We can say 0 degree, but in fact, there is no such 0 degree value. So we call it as interval data. Then the next one is ratio data. Next. It is quantitative. It is given in order. There is a fixed origin. That is the difference between interval data and ratio data. In the case of interval data, there is no origin. There is no true zero. But here, there is a fixed origin. There is a fixed distance, like income. There could be zero income, zero experience. We can say whether actually zero is there or not. We can have true zero. True zero value can be taken into account. See, we are taking 0 to 10,000 rupees income, 10,001 to 20,000. So we are taking 0. That is called ratio. So here we can compute the ratio between two quantities. So it is quantitative, order, fixed origin, fixed distance. In the case of interval data, quantitative, order, distance, but no origin. So here there is a fixed origin. So that is what about the nominal data, ordinal data, interval data, and ratio data. Then the next one, dichotomous. Next slide, please. Dichotomous. In the case of dichotomous, there are two choices only. That is either or. Yes or no type questions are regarded as dichotomous. So if any question contains two choices only, we call it as dichotomous question. Next. Next. Yes. See, here we have to ponder certain points. Excuse me. It is getting dark, so let me switch on the light. Yes. See, what are the points we have to ponder? Number one, the case of age. I told you, no, you can decide whether it is open-ended question or closed-ended question according to your choice, according to your discretion, according to your feeling, according to your nature of study, you can decide. Suppose, if you are collecting the age in the exact terms, so for example, 42, 53, 62, 71, 18, 19, 20, 33, 45, like that, it is a scale data. It is a scale data. Suppose, if you are collecting the date, if you are collecting the data for age in groups, see up to 20, 22, 40, 42, 60 and above 60, here age group can be regarded as nominal. Age group can be regarded as nominal. Why? Because it is a categorical. One thing. Second one, we can say that it is an ordinal. Why? There is an order, ascending order, up to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60 and above 60. So it is given in an order. The choices are given in an order. So we call it as ordinal data. If actual age is collected, it is a scale data. Then educational level or educational qualification. What is appropriate? And what are the choices to be given in these cases? See, for example, if you have given the question as, or if your variable is educational level, then you should provide the levels of education, like up to school level, UG level, PG level, or others. Like that you can give. Suppose, if you are giving the variable as educational qualification, then you cannot say up to school level, you cannot say. So qualification, SSLC, higher secondary, degree, PG degree, professional degree, or some diploma, like that, you should give the choices. See the difference. Up to school level, UG level, PG level, others means educational level. SSLC, higher secondary, or PUC, UG degree, PG degree, diploma, they are called educational qualification. Unfortunately, some of the scholars commit mistake. See, they are giving the variable as educational level, but the choices are SSLC, higher secondary, like that. So be careful about this. Similarly, occupation and occupational status. In the case of occupation, employment, business, profession, agriculture, like that only you can give the choices. If you have taken the variable occupation, then employment, business, profession, agriculture. Like that only you can give the choices. In the case of occupational status, employee, see the difference. Businessman, professional, farmer. In this case only, you can give housewife, student, like that. Because housewife and student are not occupations. If you want to give these choices, then it is better to give the variable occupational status rather than occupation. Understand the difference. Where you can select age or age group. Where you can select educational level or educational qualification. Where you can choose occupation and where you can choose occupational status. Next. Next slide, please. Yes. Order of choices. I told you no, there is no condition, there is no stipulation, or there is no criteria, but it is better to provide the choices in a particular order in order to avoid confusions among the respondents. See, here I told you no, you are not required to prove your proficiency in the language. It should be simple and easy to understand for the respondents. See, in the case of marital status, we know what is meant by married and what is meant by single, we know. But some of the respondents may not know what is single. They know only married and unmarried. They do not know what is married and what is single. In case, if you have given the choice single as the first, in the first order, and married in the second order, what happened? Sometimes the respondents do not find time to read the entire questionnaire and state their responses. So they just read the first choice and decide whether it is to be selected or that is to be selected, like that. So if they are not able to understand what is single, there is a possibility of giving incorrect data. So better the well-known choice may be given first and the next choice is to be given for single. Similarly, for nature of family, joint family we all know. But nuclear family, the respondents may not be aware of the term nuclear family. So better you provide the joint family as the first order and nuclear family as the second choice. So that is better. These are to be kept in mind. Next. Next slide. Yeah. So that's all about the questionnaire. How to design or frame the questionnaire. So how many questions must be there? For PG dissertations, 25 to 30 questions are enough. I'm telling about the single individual questions. 25 to 30 questions are enough, sufficient, because you will be having 3 or 4 objectives only. Based on the objectives, you can decide the analytical part. So better, it can be divided into some 3 or 4 sections, and questions may be included up to some 25 or 30 questions, so that your questionnaire will be a good one, and it will be the best tool for collection of data. Now we have collected the data. Then we have to move on to the next step, analytical part. Since you are doing the PG dissertation or you are undertaking the PG project work only, you are expected or you are supposed to perform mostly percentage analysis only, it seems. Is it not? So you are doing percentage analysis. So what's a percentage analysis? It is a comparison between two quantities. Two quantities are there, we are comparing two quantities. That is, the frequencies are compared. Like in the case of age group or in case of gender, how many respondents are there? How many female respondents are there? How many male respondents are there? What is the total number of respondents? What is the proportion of male respondents to the total number of respondents? What is the percentage of female respondents to the total number of respondents? Like that, we are conducting the percentage analysis. So this percentage analysis is used to determine the proportion of respondents in each category. It should be simple and easy to understand, and it should be simple and easy to calculate. It is very simple to calculate. So if, for example, we are counting how many male respondents are there, how many female respondents are there. That is called frequency. So in the frequency table, first column, gender, second column, number of respondents, third column, percentage. In the first column, that is gender column, male. Then number of male respondents. For example, 120 male respondents. Then what is number of female respondents? Female 80, total 200. So first column, male and female. Second column, frequency 120, 80. Third column, percentage. What is the percentage of male respondents to the total number of respondents? What is the total number of respondents? 200. What is the number of male respondents? 120. How to arrive at the percentage? Number of male respondents divided by total number of respondents into 100. So 120 by 200 into 100, so 60. So male 120, 60 percentage. Female 80, 40 percentage. Total frequency 200, total percentage 100. Like that, we have to prepare the frequency table. That is called percentage analysis. This percentage analysis is most widely used for description of data. So we are giving the descriptive statistics only. Only the frequencies are given and the percentage are given. Like the gender, we can have the next one. For example, age group up to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to, above 60. Number of respondents, 24, 48, like that we are giving. So 24 by 200, 12%. 48 by 200, 40%. Like that we can give. Okay. So, 48 by 200. So 48 by 200 into 100, 24%. Like that we can provide the percentage analysis. Then in the case of Likert scale, strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. How many respondents are there? What is the percentage? Based on that we can provide. But in the case of ranking, first rank, how many respondents? What is the percentage? Second rank, number of respondents, percentage. Third rank, fourth rank, fifth rank, and so on. Like that, we have to prepare the percentage analysis and frequency table. Next. Yes. After writing the percentage analysis, we have to write the interpretation. How to interpret? I told you no. See, from the table, it is understood that 60% of the respondents are males and 40% of the respondents are females. At the PG level, many students write interpretation like this only. Or sometimes they write like this. It is therefore implied that the majority of the respondents are males, or majority of the, or most of the respondents are males. Like that, we are writing the interpretation. At the PG level, it is okay. When you are going to further research, MPhil or PhD, it is just a description of what is given in quantitative terms. What is given in the table? Male 120, 60%. Female 80, 40%. Like, that's all. Is it not? But we are describing. We are giving in words, that's all. That is not in fact interpretation. And moreover, while writing the interpretation, you should write what you have understood, what you have perceived. Here, you have to take care of your observation, your interpretation, because if there is any misinterpretation, your entire research work will not be valid. Say, for example, one researcher conducted a research with a frog. He kept the frog on the table. He called it to jump. It jumped. He kept the frog again on the table. He cut one of the legs. He called again to jump. The frog jumped. Again it is brought to the table. Second leg is cut. Jumped. Again brought to the table. Third leg is cut. Jump. It is jumped. Then fourth leg is cut and it is kept on the table. When the researcher called jump, it is unable to jump. Why it is unable to jump? It has no legs. If it has no legs, there is no possibility for the frog to jump. It is well known. The researcher writes interpretation like this. If all the four legs are cut, frog becomes deaf. Frog becomes deaf. It is unable to hear. It is hearing impaired. Like that he has written the interpretation. Just understand whether this interpretation is correct. No. Like that, if you are writing interpretation in this manner, your entire work will not be considered as valid. So better you have to write suitable and good interpretation based on the facts given in the table. What about the findings? Findings is different from interpretation. Unfortunately, many scholars copy and paste what they have written in the interpretation in the findings part also. It is not good at all. So we have to differentiate. You have to differentiate the interpretation from the findings. For example, satisfaction. For example, satisfaction. We have given certain factors influencing satisfaction: price, quality, quantity. Let us have three only, for example: price, quality, and quantity. What choices we have given for each of these attributes? Highly satisfied, satisfied, neutral, dissatisfied, highly dissatisfied. These are the choices given for these three attributes. Okay. Now we have collected the data. We find that for price, 40% of the respondents are highly satisfied. 40% are highly satisfied. 30% are satisfied. 20% are neutral. 7% are dissatisfied. Then the remaining percentage. So for example, 3%, they are highly dissatisfied. Now, while writing the interpretation, you can say that more number of respondents are satisfied, or the majority of the respondents are highly satisfied with the price. You have written the interpretation. Or you can write like this: the proportion of respondents highly satisfied. Understand? The proportion of respondents highly satisfied with the price forms the greatest proportion of the total respondents. See the interpretation in the advanced level. At the beginner's level, 40% are highly satisfied, 30% are satisfied, 20% are neutral, 7% are dissatisfied, 3% are highly dissatisfied. Beginner's level interpretation. Advanced level interpretation: the proportion of respondents highly satisfied with the price forms the greatest proportion of the total respondents. Right? Now, come to the findings. The findings should be entirely different from the interpretation. But understand, it is just different in words, not different in meaning. So what observation you have actually made should form part of your findings. So findings are the summary of results. It should also be simple to understand. You should provide the actual facts, and it should not be contradict from the interpretation. I told you, you have to differentiate the findings from the interpretation. It doesn't mean that there is a contradiction between the interpretation and finding. The same meaning must be there. Only thing is the different way, the different style. That's all. I told you, no, the greatest proportion of the respondents are highly satisfied. Here, in findings, you can write like this: the proportion of respondents satisfied, both highly and satisfied. The proportion of respondents satisfied are more than the respondents dissatisfied. So you can say the respondents are more satisfied with price. That is finding. See the difference? See, in the interpretation, you have given the interpretation in a lengthy format, lengthy sentence. But here it is simple. The respondents are more satisfied with the price. Suppose the next one, quality. I told you, no, quality. The percentage of highly satisfied respondents with the quality is 46. Then quantity, 28, for example. Price 40, quality 48, quantity quality 48, quantity 28. In this case, you can write one more finding, that is the respondents or the consumers are satisfied with the quality more than on the price and the quantity. Or you can write like this: the consumers are least satisfied with the quantity. Like that also you can write the findings. Then next slide, suggestions or recommendations. Please understand, the suggestions should not be general. It must be specific. What is general and what is specific? In many cases, the student writes suggestions like this: adequate measures are to be taken, further steps are to be taken, additional facilities are to be provided. What is additional? What is adequate? What is further? No clarification. Being a researcher, you should give what is suggested, right? See, the awareness level is less about the product. Okay. You can say, how can you improve the awareness level? Suggest any one measure. That is enough. And that must also be based on the findings, not general. Based on the findings. What is the finding? Awareness level is less among the consumers. So how to improve the consumers' awareness level? You can say that we can conduct the awareness campaign. See, nowadays, what is the problem? The problem is awareness among the public about the COVID vaccination is less. It is true. Whether it is whether vaccination is adequately available or not, that is different. Whether the public are aware of getting vaccination, less awareness. So how to improve the awareness level? We are giving awareness advertisements or publicity in newspapers, in television, in radios. Is it not? So what is the best media of awareness? You have to understand. Television, suppose. If television is the best media of creating awareness, you can say that a publicity may be given or awareness may be created through television by celebrities. Understand? By celebrities. Suppose if you want to create awareness among the children, how can the advertisement or publicity or the creation of awareness be effective? How the children are attracted? They are attracted with the cartoons. Is it not? So they are attracted with cartoons. Better to improve or to create the awareness among the children, it is better to give commercial advertisements in television in the form of cartoons or dolls or toys. So that will attract the children. Like that, your suggestion must be specific. And moreover, it should be adaptable. You have to follow. It should be acceptable. It should be implementable. Otherwise, the suggestion is not good. Okay. Then the final part is conclusion. Next. Yeah. Conclusion must be brief. It should not be lengthy. It should be restricted with a single paragraph. Up to 10 lines, 8 to 10 lines is enough. Not multiple paragraphs, not multiple pages, understand. Conclusion must be crisp. It should be brief. Here, your conclusion should provide answer to your research questions. Suppose you have undertaken a study on job satisfaction of employees. This is the problem. So your conclusion must contain answer to this problem. That is, whether the employees of particular organization are satisfied or not. You should give concrete conclusion. There should not be any confusion. There should not be any ambiguous conclusion. It should be crystal clear. Yes, they are satisfied. Or even if it is they are not satisfied, you just give as it is. There should be an honest conclusion. Yes, they are satisfied. No, they are not satisfied with the welfare measures provided by the organization. Like that, the conclusion must be there. So that's all about the designing of questionnaire, analysis, interpretation, findings, suggestion, and conclusion. I hope you all would have gained some sort of knowledge from these 2 days sessions. If it is so, I am very happy. And if I have given some valuable insights, the credit goes to my teachers. If I have not given you crystal clear information, the mistake is on my part only. I accept honestly. I hope my teachers may take the credit. I hope you all will be giving positive feedback. Thank you. I would like to thank the management, principal, the coordinator, vice principal, faculty members, and the participants for having given me the wonderful opportunity to share my sum of views about the PG dissertation preparation for the past 2 days. And I would like to thank all the participants once more for your patient listening. And this is the time for you to ask any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. As you told, if you are good enough, yes, obviously your teachers are responsible, and we have to thank our lecturers who have been so supportive, and they all encourage us like towards, and we gained a lot of knowledge from you, sir, and we expect the same thing in our future to our juniors. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
I request our participants to drop any questions in chat box, or you can feel free to unmute and talk to our resource person. Guys, if you have any queries, any question, kindly feel free to unmute and talk, or you can drop any text in chat box. Oh, I think all the participants have understood your brief explanation on our project dissertation, sir. Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
are getting responses in our chat box. Let me read it out, sir.
Yeah.
Is preparing of hypothesis is compulsory, sir?
For percentage analysis, it is not necessary. For inferential statistics, it is compulsory.
Okay, Ranjita, I think
Sir, what about
there's a point.
descriptive
What about?
statistics? Sir, what about
Yeah,
descriptive?
percentage analysis only you are giving no. Huh?
Yes,
In
yes,
that
sir.
case, it is not necessary. Okay.
Okay, okay, thank you, sir.
Um,
Any other question?
Participants, any other questions?
When we are using Likert scale, it is necessary to give a statement or it can be as a question. Yes, very good question. Thank you, Sri Krishna. See, if you are asking the level of significance, I mean the level of agreement, like strongly agree, neutral, disagree, and strongly disagree, in that case, the question should be in a statement form. In the case of satisfaction, it should be given in the factor form, like as I told you, quantity, quality, price, like that only. In the case of the level of agreement, you can say, I am, for example, I know all the regulations. I am always purchasing the product from this store only. Like that, it should be given in the statement form. Right? Sri Krishna, have you got the answer?
Yes, sir, it is clear.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I request our participants to fill the feedback forms before 6 p.m. It will be shared by my co-met, Elizabeth. Yeah, she's already dropped it. Kindly fill it. So the feedback links will not be shared in WhatsApp group, guys, since it is to the participants who have attended the session. With this, I would like to go with out of thanks. When we focus on our gratitude, the tide of disappointment goes out and the tide of love rushes in. Ravina of final year MCOM is here to express our gratitude by proposing Ore of Thanks. Over to you, Pravina.
Thank you, Preeta. Enjoy the little things for one day. You may look back and realize they were the big things. Good evening to one and all present here. I am Pravina Mitrivi, pursuing final year MCOM at St. Teresa's Degree College, Foreman. I deem it is a great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks on this workshop. Let me first of all start by giving glory to the Almighty God for making today's session a resounding success. First and foremost, I express my gratitude to our today's resource person, Dr. D. Kumaresan sir, who despite of his busy schedule had found time to share his knowledge with us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I wholeheartedly thank our well-wisher, Dr. Sister Prema, for her support in her absence. Thank you, sister. My heartfelt thanks to our Vice Principal, Mrs. Malika ma'am, in her absence. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our program coordinator, Mrs. Kaveri ma'am, for organizing such a knowledgeable workshop. Thank you, ma'am. I'm very happy to extend my sincere thanks to our PG coordinator, Mrs. Navishri ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. And a special mention to Rekha D. Ma'am for our technical support. Thank you, ma'am. Last but not the least, I take this opportunity to thank all the faculties, participants, and coordinators. Thank you all.
Thank you, Pravina, for your delightful gratitude. And sir, behalf of institution, I really thank you for spending time with us and sharing all your knowledges. As I mentioned, we expect the same thing in our future for our juniors, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Preeta, for your wonderful coordination. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I thank for all the participants who have joined and made a huge success. Thank you all.
Shall I leave, Ma?
Yes, sir. You can feel free to drop, sir. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.